speak this morning through your Spirit. And we ask this in the name of Jesus, and everyone said, amen. Okay, so Numbers 13. We're going to do a few weeks series, probably 3, maybe 4 weeks, as we take a break as we're going through the book of Acts. And we're going to look, just as we enter into this new year, into a new time at this. The series title is this, Lord, open my eyes. And the heart of it is we want to see through the eyes of the Lord. Seeing through the eyes of the Lord. And this morning, the first thing that we're going to look at, or in this series, the study this morning is this. It is seeing God in it all. Seeing God in it all. 2026 is here, the beginning of a new year. With that, like we've mentioned, comes new opportunities. New things that you're looking forward to. You may or may not have, depending on your personality, asked for a calendar, or maybe you didn't ask for it, you just went out and got one, and you started already putting dates on marking certain events, if it's a vacation, if it's a surgery, if it's a new thing, different things that are ahead of you in 2026. Some of these things are known, but we know too, with a new year, new times, there's things that we don't know as well. Isn't that true? There's much that's ahead of us in this year that we have no idea that they're even there, that the Lord has it planned for us. New doors that are going to open through us, new experiences for us. And with those, they can be both exciting as we're looking forward to that, but at the same time, it can be intimidating, right? The fear of the unknown, what may come that we have no idea about. But have you ever even just stopped and considered this? The beginning of a new year also means the end of another year. And I would encourage you just to take a moment to think back of 2025. Some of you are saying, I'm glad that it's over. It's been a year. It was a hard year maybe. Man, it was a blessed year, and that's okay too. But just even stop and consider all that came to you, all that came to us in 2025 that we had no idea that the Lord had planned for us. And yet you can look back and you can see over the course of that year, you can see over the course of your life, God was in every aspect of it. You didn't necessarily know it at the time. As you were facing whatever it may be, you might have been saying, I have no idea how this is going to work out. Lord, I don't feel that you're here. Lord, it doesn't seem like you're here. But now perhaps looking back, you can say, Lord, I see exactly what you were doing. I know how you were working. And even for us who don't have the answer yet, you're saying, I'm still waiting for it to be resolved. I'm still waiting to see how the Lord was in this. Well, keep waiting. God is in it, and he will show you. And now, this is true of us for all of us in different ways, for us as a church even. But I just want you to think too that seasons come in life, right? Right now we're in the middle of winter, the season of the cold, the snow, the short daylight, and the long darkness that there is. Seasons that come for all of our lives, whether it would be your family, right? You might be in a season of, man, I'm just holding on, and I hope that nobody gets hurt today when you have toddlers. Even last night, I'm putting one to bed, one's in bed, one's getting a bath, and Olivia's getting another one dressed. And so I sent Eden downstairs by herself. I'm like, what? There's nothing down there. All the gates are locked. What can she do? And it wasn't but 5 minutes later, she's crying because she stood up on an ottoman trying to touch the Christmas tree and fell, and she has a bloody lip. It's just seasons that we're in. I'm like, okay, they're going to be okay. I know this. And so we go through different seasons, getting to new phases of life. You know, even I think about that. Maybe you're in a different season where the kids are moving out, or a season where a job is coming to an end. You're retiring, whatever that may be. And it's important to stop and to consider this, that when it comes to your relationship with the Lord, there's also places that the Lord wants you to be in. There's seasons in your walk with the Lord. And in 2026, there's places that he wants to take you into, greater ground that he wants to take you into in your walk with him. There's freedom that he wants to bring you in, a revelation of who he is. He doesn't change, but we have a deeper understanding. There's progress that he's making in your life, ways that he wants to use you. And what do we exactly mean by this? Well, we can say this, that the Lord is continually making us to be more like Jesus. Much change has already occurred, right? Just think about this. Do you remember when you were first saved? You were like, when maybe you were reading and you came to the book of Job, and you're like, Job? What is Job? Right? And looking back, it's easy to laugh at that. You're like, I had no idea. But look how much the Lord has brought you through. Look just in your life, all that God has done in and through you. You were set free from sin. Now, as you walk with the Lord, you have a peace in your heart that you never had before. Right? Your language, maybe your speech has changed. The Lord has just seasoned your speech with his love and his grace, all that he's done. And when you stop and reflect, we can at that time then remember. Maybe it was starting to come to church again, and the Lord has done that. But I would just want to, again, emphasize this, that the Lord has more for us, more for you in 2026. It reminds me of this in Philippians 1:6. You know this verse, right? If not, it's a good one to memorize, to put on a note card. But it's Philippians 1:6, and there Paul writes to the church at Philippi, and he says this, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will be faithful to finish it to the end. See, God has started a work in your life. God has started that work in saving you. God has brought you through much. He's doing much. And you need to know that God is going to finish that work. He is faithful to do that, to accomplish that which he has started in your life. He's making you more like Jesus, right? You experience who Christ is yourself, but then even think about this. The world begins to experience Christ through you as they come into contact with you. And now just in praying and asking the Lord, what do you have for us in 2026? My prayer is this, is that the Lord would open our eyes to see all that he has for us in this new year. You might say it this way. If I was to rephrase it, that prayer might look like this. Lord, give me your eyes to see as you see. To see as you see. You know, and just even thinking about this, I know that like those phrases, or we can say, okay, yeah, I agree about that. But have you ever just even stopped and considered the story of the Bible? Just think about that for a moment. Think about when God created the earth, right? It was created at perfect man. We were made in his image without sin. And from there, what happened? Man, Adam and Eve, they chose to rebel against God. And then all throughout the Bible is this one narrative that's written. And it's God's promise to send a Savior to redeem us from him. From sin, not from him, to him. Now put yourself at different stories, or in different characters of the different stories in the Bible, right? You can pick Abraham. God gave a promise to Abraham that his children would be like the descendants of the stars, right? He would have many, many descendants. He didn't have any kids at that time. Even in Abraham's life, he never saw that come to fulfillment. God promised Abraham that Abraham, through your seed, the nations of the earth will be blessed, right? So Abraham, when we dive deep and standing in his point of view, he couldn't see it all. But the Lord had a plan. The Lord saw how he was going to use Abraham, how he was going to use his life to send the Messiah to redeem you and I. And now we are the recipients of that. And do you see how the Lord sees things differently? The Lord has a different point of view. Now, don't mistake me when I say this. We're not asking the Lord this because I think sometimes we can fall into this trap. Lord, I want to know everything that's going to happen. I want to know the beginning to the end. And Lord, tell me all the plans. Tell me all the details. Tell me all the detours so that I know. And really what I'm saying is this, Lord, I don't want to trust you. Tell me ahead of time, so I don't have to be in that position of having to trust, having to rely upon you. God doesn't do that. We're not asking the Lord to prophetically show us every event in the future, but as we're approaching each aspect, each circumstance of life, Lord, help me to see that as you see it. You know, going back to that same thing, think about just David. You could say that this was true of David. David saw his life, and he saw the circumstances of life through the eyes of the Lord. You know, it's a story that we're familiar with, but you go to David and Goliath. And when David, when he went out into the battlefield, what did the Israelites see? They saw the Philistines. They saw a giant that was insurmountable. That they saw the impossibility of the situation. And how do we know that? Well, they sat there in panic. They sat there in fear. They didn't do anything. They were waiting for something to happen. Now here comes David on the scene. He walks there bringing some food to his brothers, and he walks up, and what does he see as he hears the report, as he hears the people talking, as he sees Goliath and he hears Goliath calling out, right? Send someone to fight me. Who will fight me? David heard all that. And David, seeing through the eyes of the Lord and seeing the Lord, even in that circumstance, what did he say? I'll go and fight the giant, right? And I know that that's simple. I know that you say, well, that's the story that we should be hearing, that the kids should be hearing in the Sunday school. But that's a story that we need to remember because David's perspective changed how he acted. And this is what we're going to look at next week, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But when you see as the Lord sees, you'll do as the Lord would do. When you see as the Lord sees, you and I will do as the Lord will do. We'll act as He would. We'll approach our lives as He would approach it. And David said, Lord, I see this as another opportunity to show yourself strong. Lord, you used me to kill a bear and a lion with my bare hands. And if I did that, what's this Philistine? So do you see how you look at things? Do I look at my life? Do I look at the circumstances through the eyes of the Lord or not? So this morning in your Numbers chapter 13, we want to look at this, is that we want to see God in all aspects of life. We want to see God in it all. Now, Numbers 13, let me give you the context or the background, the setting as we study through this chapter this morning. You know that for 400 years that Israel, they were slaves in Egypt. They couldn't escape from Pharaoh. There's nothing that they could do to free themselves. And yet over that 400 years, God raised up a deliverer named, what was his name? Moses, right? There'll be a test on that at the end. Hope you're all paying attention. Moses was raised up to deliver Israel and to take them out of Egypt and into the land. And remember that as God heard the cries of his people, as God sent Moses, God gave his people a promise. He said, I will bring you out. I will take you out to bring you into the land that I have for you. That's why we refer to the land that they were going to as what? The promised land. Do you ever just think about why it's called the promised land? It's not like that was the name sign as they were walking along, as they passed the different mountains. They referred to it as the promised land simply because of this was the land that God gave to them by promise. God said he would do it. In Hebrews 6:18, here, the writer of Hebrews says this. I'm reading out of the New Living Translation. It says, so God has given both his promise and his oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Now, hearing that verse, knowing that truth, let me ask you this question. This is going to be participation, okay? So you're going to answer this question out loud. It's an easy question. It's a yes or no question. If you're listening online, you can yell through the camera. We can't hear you, so you get a pass if you get it wrong. But let me ask you this, okay? If God promised to give Israel the land, will God keep his promise? And the answer is yes, right? Good. See, I told you it would not be hard. Yes, he will. It's impossible for God to lie. When God gives his word, when God gives his promise, he will keep it. He will fulfill it. So the question then is, it's not if God would do it, but it would then be when God would do it. It would be how God would do it. There's no ifs. It was a promise that God would do. And just thinking about that even, what promises are you holding onto as you enter this new year? Was it something that last year God just put on your heart, a verse that he gave to you, one of his promises, something that he's doing in your life that he desires to do through you? Do you know that God keeps his promises? And maybe again, it hasn't come to pass, and the key word is yet. Yet. God will keep his promises. And just like, I don't have it memorized, but I think it's in Hebrews 6:10, but it says that we have to patiently endure that we might see the promise fulfilled. As Abraham had to patiently endure, they had to wait. Maybe God just has you in a time of waiting. A time of waiting. And I say all this because we want to learn from the children of Israel. They had this promise that God would bring them into the land, but it hasn't come to pass yet. It's been a short amount of time. Now, as they're on their way into the land, God had, let me just remind us again, remember how he brought them out? There were how many plagues? 10, right? After the 10 plagues, they saw it. You know, they experienced lice in all the land. They experienced darkness over all of Egypt except for right where they dwelt, their camp was. They were the ones who marched across the Red Sea on dry ground. And they saw as they looked back, the sea close on the Egyptian army, and everybody was annihilated. Okay, this is that same group. It's important to know that. Because now as they're on their way, they're continuing on to the promised land, they ask Moses, who is leading them, this question, okay? You're in Numbers 13. Keep a marker here. Go to the right and go to Deuteronomy chapter 1. This context is super important to know as we jump into this. Now in Deuteronomy chapter 1, here Moses is, he's giving a recap of the what God has done. So he's now looking back, he's recounting it, he's remembering it. And the Bible, do you know this, that the Bible is the best commentary on the Bible, right? You don't have to always go to external sources, but let the Bible interpret the Bible. Here we get a little bit of insight to what happens in Numbers 13. In Deuteronomy chapter 1, look with me at verse 21. There it says, "And I said to you, you have come to the mountains," I'm not in verse 21. "Look, the Lord your God has set before you the land before you. Go up and possess it, as the Lord God of your fathers has spoken to you. Do not be fear or be discouraged." That's Moses to Israel. Okay, millions of people. He says, God has given it. God has given you this promise. Now go and take it. Don't be fearful. Verse 22, "And every one of you came near to me and said, 'Let us send men before us, and let them search out the land before us, and bring back word to us of the way which we should go up, and the cities for which we shall come.'" Here in this, he says then in verse 23, he says, "The plan pleased me well, so I took 12 of your men, one man from each tribe." And then Moses would allow the spies to go. Okay, turn back over to Numbers 13. That's the context. That is what has happened. Numbers 13, as we jump into it this morning, this is the spies going out. So the people came to Moses, and they said, "Moses, we want to know. We want to know what the land is like. Can we send these spies?" And they can go, and they can come back and give us a report. Now, for Moses, and even for, I think for Moses and for the people, we can note this as a lapse of faith in their life. A place where they weren't trusting, they weren't relying, they weren't resting on the word of God. They shouldn't have sent the spies into the land. God allowed them to send the spies. God didn't send the spies. He allowed them to be sent. Why didn't they have to go? Why didn't they have to send the spies? Because of this. They had the promise of God. They already knew what the land was like. God had already told them. But they wanted more details, just like you and I, right? They wanted to know the how, and they wanted to know the when. What's this going to look like? What's ahead of us? And haven't you found this to be true in your life? I know I can in mine. Lord, you've given me this promise. Lord, you've done this. You've given me this specific word. But Lord, I have that to hold on to, but I don't see how this is going to come to pass. Lord, I don't know how this is working. Lord, so let me send some spies to figure this out, right? Maybe we start to manipulate the situation. We start to ask questions, and it looks like this. I have to go talk to this person over here, and maybe then they'll say something to that person. And maybe if all these people talk, and maybe then I can figure this out, and I can come up with a plan to just make it come to pass. I don't know how it looks like, this vision or this dream in your heart that God has given to you, that he desires to do in and through you. But we find ourselves wanting to know the exact dates, the exact times, the people who will be involved, the next 10 steps. Now, do you know that God doesn't give us all the details? I can think of at least 2 reasons. I'm sure that there's more. But number one, God doesn't give us all the details for this. He wants us to trust him. He wants us to trust him. If I had all the details, do you know what I would trust in? My plan to figure it out. I would say, man, okay, if I know that X is going to happen then and Y is going to happen then, I'm going to turn to my wisdom and I'm not going to have to rely upon the Lord. And so God in his wisdom and his grace, he doesn't give us all the details so that we will trust him. I like this verse in Genesis 24:27. There, the servant is sent out to find a bride and to bring it back to the groom. And listen to what the Lord says here. He says, this is the servant, this is what he says. As for me, being on the way, the Lord led me out to the house of my master's brother. Notice what he says. He says they're on the way. What happened? The Lord led me. And you'll find the same is true in your life and in mine. As you're going, as God has given you that call, the promise, you're saying, okay, I'm going to seek the Lord. I'm going to do it. I don't know all the details. The Lord will lead you on the way. But we have to be able to trust him, right? We have to come to the place where I say, Lord, I'm going to step not knowing the next 10 steps. And it puts us in a position of faith. Not only that, but number 2, I think the Lord doesn't tell us all the details for this. If we knew all the details, we would be overwhelmed, wouldn't we? We would be overwhelmed. We would say something like this: I could never go through that. Lord, I don't want that in my life. Lord, there's no way that could ever happen. You know, one pastor said it this way. He said this. He said, don't let the lack of knowledge stop you from obeying God. Facts will follow faith. Don't let the lack of knowledge trouble your mind, or you could say worry you. And so at times, God doesn't give us all the details because he knows, again, it would be too much for us. And when we need it, he will give it to us. Facts will follow faith. And I just even think in the short time of this little church, man, if you would tell me everything that we would have went through as a family last year, I would say, no way. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't even know how it would all work out. I didn't know how it was going to work out in the middle of it. And I know that all of us experience that in different ways, in different circumstances. But God wants us to trust him. Maybe that's even you this morning, right? And the word this is just a word for you, that he wants you to be reminded to trust him, that he will fulfill the promise in your life, right? And you know this. Maybe it's just a reminder that God is involved in your life. The circumstances, what's going on around you, they're not by chance, they're not by accident, but God has you right where you are, with the people that you are, living in the place that you are for a specific reason and a specific purpose. And God sees and God knows and God is working in your life. He's preparing you. He's using you, even when you don't feel like he's present with you. And that's, again, why we want to have the eyes of the Lord, to see him in all things. So, that being said, Numbers 13. Let's read, starting with verse 1 down to 20. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them." And Moses sent from the wilderness of Paran, according to the command of the Lord, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. Now these were their names: from the tribe of Reuben, Shumiah, the son of Zachor; from the tribe of Simeon, the Shaphite, the son of Hori; from the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh; from the tribe of Issachar, Igal, the son of Joseph; from the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea, the son of Nun; from the tribe of Benjamin, Paltai, the son of Raphu; from the tribe of Zebulun, Giddel, the son of Sadi; from the tribe of Joseph, that is, from the tribe of Manasseh, Gadai, the son of Shushi. And verse 12, from the tribe of Dan, Amiel, the son of Gemali; from the tribe of Asher, Sethshur, the son of Michael; from the tribe of Naphtali, Nahibai, the son of Vashvi; from the tribe of Gad, Guel, the son of Michai. Verse 16, and these are the names of the men whom Moses sent to spy out of the land. And Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua. Then Moses sent them to spy the land of Canaan, and said to them, "Go up this way into the south, and go up into the mountains, and see what the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds, whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forests or not. Be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land." And now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So again, Moses is sending the spies off. They ask Moses, "Can we do this? Moses, we want to know what the land's like. We want to know what the people are like." And Moses permitted them to go, permitted them to see. Now, verse 18, we want to take note of this. And here's what we want to be aware of or watch for in our life. We want to be aware of subtle unbelief that creeps into our hearts. I think that Moses is experiencing this in verse 18. Notice in sending the spies off, he says this specifically. He says to them, "See what the land is like." Now how in that phrase, how in that small little few words is there a mark of unbelief in the heart of Moses? Well, we know this, that Moses already knew what the land was like. He already knew. He didn't need a report. He didn't need to get the 5-page documentary of here's where everything is, here's all the details of it all. He knew it. Well, you say, "How do I know that?" And I'm glad that you asked. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 8, you could turn there or I'll read it to you. There, we read this specifically about the land. And it says, "So I came down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up from the land." And here's the description that Moses was given of the land. To a good and a large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. So there, God had already given him a description of the land. He said, and if you didn't catch it, it's a good land. It's a large land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. And there's enemies in there. He did say that. He listed the specific people. Also in Exodus 13, verse 5, there Moses again noted what the land was like. And he says, "And it shall be that when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in the month." Again, the same thing is repeated. It's a good land, Moses. It's a land that is fruitful. It is a land where I'm going to bless you, but I'm also telling you that there's difficulty ahead. There's enemies in the land. But I think that as the people began to ask Moses, I think that in Moses' heart, that he started to wonder and he started to doubt himself. And I know that I can be susceptible to this. And you probably can too, can't you? Man, I know that this is true, but there's this time period, right? And when God gives you that promise and you're holding on to it, but then there's this gap between the fulfillment of the promise, when you see it come to pass, and when he has given it, we're susceptible to unbelief or to fear settling in. And as fear began to take root in him, we saw that this unbelief started to take root as well. And I want to encourage us this morning. I want to encourage you, and this is an exhortation to myself too. Don't coddle fear and unbelief in your life. Don't give it a place. Don't give any room or any opportunity for it. You want to know this? Here's the answer to fear. Here's the answers to the fears that you have even now. Do you want to know it? It's simple. It's to trust the Lord. It doesn't get any more complicated. There's no special formula. There's no thing that you can do. You take this pill, right, and all your fears go away. The world may say that. It's not any of that. The answer to the fears that we have is to simply trust the Lord. One pastor said this. He said that faith is saying, I know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm looking at, and I am choosing to say yes to the Lord and to the work that he wants to do. I don't have all the facts. I know that there's enemies ahead. Lord, I know that there's difficulties ahead, but I know that you've called me to this. Lord, I know that you've asked me to do this. And I'm not going to give a place to that fear in my heart. Lord, I'm going to move ahead trusting you. Faith, right? Faith doesn't mean that there's an absence of fear. But faith means I'm going to obey in spite of the fear, right? Because you have to move forward sometimes when you're still fearful. But it's saying, Lord, I'm going to trust you and to obey no matter what. And there's times in our life when we, like Moses, we need to be encouraged. And we need not only just be encouraged, but we need to remind ourselves of the promises of God. And so when this time passes, like I mentioned before, things seem to get harder. Because as that time passes of the fulfillment of God's promise, right? He gives it to you, but it hasn't come to pass. What happens? We begin to talk to ourselves. And what do? We begin to talk to ourselves, and we begin just to look outward, and we start to describe all the difficulties, right? We start to just see only the impossibilities in front of us. And we just describe, man, how difficult it is, how long we've been waiting. I think about this. We need to be reminded, like Jesus, he came to a man whose son was sick. And Jesus said to the man, this is in Mark chapter 9, verses 23 and 24. He said, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. Now listen to this. And it says, immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, help. Lord, help. I believe, but help my unbelief. And maybe even this morning, you need to say, Lord, help my unbelief. I don't see it happening. Lord, I'm struggling. And even in that, as you confess to the Lord and you ask him to help, do you know what he'll do? He meets us as we humble ourselves with his grace. And God will come. Your eyes will be brought back to the Lord. Because even in that simple cry, even in that simple prayer, do you know what you've now done? Your eyes begin to get off the circumstances, get off the situations, and my eyes are now back on the Lord. They're back focused on him rather than the situation. Now notice in verse 21 and through 25, as the spies go into the land, we note a couple more things. We see in verse 21, it says, so they went up and they spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob, near the entrance of Hamath. And they went up through the south, and they came to Hebron, Ahim, and Sheshai, and Talmaiah. The descendants of Anak were there. Now Hebron was built. 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And they came to the valley of Eshcol, and there they cut down a branch with one cluster of grapes, and they carried it between two of them on a pole. And they also brought some of the pomegranates and figs. And the place, verse 24, was called the Valley of Eshcol, because the clusters which the men of Israel cut down there. And they returned from spying the land after 40 days. Just a couple quick things to note here. Anak, the people of Anak are mentioned. Now, this people group, we're going to learn in a little bit, that they were most likely giants, right? Giants and not Jack and the beanstalk giants. That's not what we're referring to, that type of giant. But they were people who were larger than everybody else. Probably this is where Goliath came from, this line and these groups of people. Now, you might also notice that here, how many days were they spying out the land? 40. Do you know that in the Bible, you need to know this, 40 is always the number of testing in the Bible. 40 is the number of testing. If you go and you look, for Jesus, remember in the wilderness, he was tempted how many days? 40 days and 40 nights. So you can just mark, whenever you see 40, it was a time of testing. And God, he was in this, he was allowing the people's heart, the spies' heart, he was allowing Israelites' heart to be tested. Not that he didn't know, it's not that so he could see what's in their heart, but that through this, it would be revealed to them what was in their heart. So verse 26, they come back. And it says, now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all of Kadesh, and they brought back word to them, to all the congregation. They showed them the fruit of the land. And they told them, and they said, we went to the land where you sent us. And it truly flows with milk and honey. And this is the fruit. Now, if we stopped there, man, that would be glorious, right? They bring back the report and they said, it is true. The land is blessed, just like God said it was. It is fruitful, just as God said it would be. But that's not where it ends. Because you read in verse 28, nevertheless. And I have that underlined. Because that's meaning, in spite of all that I know, in spite of all that's true, listen to what they say. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land, they are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the bank of the Jordan. So here we get their report. They come back after spending 40 days, and they share back with everybody else the report of what the land is like. In verse 27, like we noted, they saw the land had an abundance. And I like, again, it was true. Just don't overlook it. What God said was true. They came back and they said everything that the Lord said. It is true. Do you know that you will discover that in your life? That at the end of your life, I know that we're not there now, but you'll be able to look back and you'll be able to look at the Word of God. And what God has said in His Word, you'll discover, man, it was all true. Man, there's none other like God. It is true. Now, God told us the land would be fruitful, and He didn't lie. Notice that. He didn't lie. And at this point, it would have served them well to just stop and to journal that fact. God said it was this. We went and we discovered it is that. And just stop the report there. But the nevertheless changes everything. Because now they're focusing on the difficulty. Now instead of seeing the Lord in it all, they see the difficulties in it all. And that God already promised, that God said He would do in their lives. They're choosing to see the difficulty rather than seeing the Lord. Because here's just this. We need to see the Lord in every aspect of life. The Lord has brought them here this far. He's told them that He would bring them in, even though there's giants, even though there's strong cities. Yet, we can see this as David would be, right? They could say, man, I see this as an opportunity then for God to show Himself strong. for God to show himself strong. They begin to look at life solely through the flesh, not through the spiritual, or not through the eyes of the Lord. Do you see how it begins to change everything? They note the strong people, the fortified cities, the giants. It's too difficult for us because they left the Lord out of what they saw. And we must remember that the Lord is present in every circumstance of life. Because, guys, we can find ourselves facing the same thing, right? As you move on into a new year, as we move into what the Lord has called us to as a church, God has called us. God has asked us to be here. God is doing a work. And the temptation is for us to get our eyes off of the Lord and to only look at the difficulties. See, the impossible in front of us doesn't mean that the Lord isn't with us. The impossible in front of us doesn't mean that the Lord won't overcome it. But it does mean that we're going to have to let go of our own wisdom, that we're going to have to trust the Lord, or we'll become discouraged or overwhelmed. Now, let me just even pause for a moment and give us a practical example, right? Sometimes it helps. Just think about the start of this church, right? When the Lord called us, Olivia and I, as in our family, to come and to start a church in the North Hills, we didn't know how. We didn't know when. We didn't know where. We had no details. We prayed for over a year before the Lord opened the door to start a Bible study in a home. And then we were like, okay, well, we started a Bible study. How are people going to know? Well, people started to invite people, and the Lord began to do it. The Lord brought the exact people that we needed, the skills that we needed. And I say all that because you are part of this story. You are part of what God is doing. Yet at the same time, I can find myself being discouraged. Lord, it's not happening in the way that I thought, or in the time that I want, or just what I had in mind. But do you know what the Lord's been encouraging me in is this, to hold on to his promise. And the Lord's word is this. It's in Deuteronomy 7. It's also in Exodus. But it's that the Lord will do it little by little. Little by little, the Lord will bring us into the land. Because that's what he said to Israel. God already had told them that I'm not going to do it all at once. You're not going to go in and all of a sudden you walk in and the people are gone, the enemies are gone, and the cities are left. He could choose to do that. But he said, I'm not going to do that because it would be too much. And the animals would come and overwhelm the land and overwhelm you. And God is doing a work little by little, week by week, service by service, day by day. The same is true in your life. It's little by little that he's doing it. Now, we know this too, that when you see the Lord in all things, you won't delay in obeying him. So they failed to see the Lord. They began to see just the difficulties. But notice the opposite is true in verse 30. It says there, then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. We are well able to overcome it. Caleb encouraged Israel to trust the Lord and obey immediately. Now Caleb, his confidence comes because he is resting in God's promise to take them into the land. And when you and I, when we delay obeying the Lord, have you ever found that it's easy to talk yourself out of obedience? Sometimes it sounds like this, okay? It sounds like this. Well, let me pray about it. Let me pray if I should do that or not. When it's a clear thing, I'm not saying that we shouldn't pray. There's times not to just pause and to wait upon the Lord. But there's other times when God has already spoken and God has called us to do it, yet we delay. We delay obeying him. Right? We can look at what happens then is we start to look at the situation, and I find the 10 reasons why I shouldn't do it instead of praying. Now, I like what Caleb is even saying. Did you notice he says, for we are well able to overcome it. Let us go into the land. Caleb's saying, guys, I'm going and I want you to come with me. Now, doesn't that encourage you when there's others in your life who just say, I'm going to pursue the Lord. I'm going to seek him. I'm going to do what he's called me to do. It encourages me. I want to then follow along, right? And God has placed you around others to encourage you, but perhaps you're that person who God's going to use your life to encourage somebody in their walk with the Lord. But I think even in the we, and even in the us there, I circled it in my Bible, but when Caleb said, let us go into the land, do you know who Caleb was saying? Not only me, not only Israel, but guys, remember the Lord is going with us. The us is not just us. We are going ahead, and God said that he would be with us. God said that he would send an angel before us. See, Caleb saw the Lord ahead of him. Caleb saw the Lord in the situations, in all that was in front of him. I like this in Isaiah 26, verse 3. There, the prophet writes, you will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts you. See, Caleb, his eyes were, I think, fixed on the Lord, looking to the Lord, trusting in the Lord. And Caleb could say, guys, let's go. He wasn't worried about how strong the cities were, how great the giants were, because he knew that God was with him, and he had a peace from God. And here's the thing. Do you know that you can do this today? That you and I can choose to see the Lord, that we can choose to refocus our vision on him. That rather than just saying, Lord, I don't know how this is going to happen, I don't know when, I don't know, it's impossible, Lord, I'm scared. All those things may be true, but you and I can say, Lord, I know that you can show yourself strong in this. Now, the last thing here, number 3, in verses 31 through 33, we can recount the Lord's past faithfulness. As we recount the Lord's past faithfulness, it strengthens our resolve to trust and to obey him today. Where do we see this? Well, in verse 31 it says, but the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against this people, for they are stronger than we. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone is as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants. The descendants of Anak came from the giants. And we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, so we were in their sight. Well, here, in spite of their encouragement to trust and obey, they again refused to go in, noting the giants, noting what they saw in that aspect. Now, where do we see recounting God's past faithfulness encourage us in our obedience today? Go over to the right to Deuteronomy chapter 7. God warned them about when this would happen. And it would be good for you to note this in your life too, because we can fall into the same trap. But God warned them. In Deuteronomy chapter 7, starting with verse 17, there the Lord says, if you should say in your heart, this is speaking specifically to where they were, if you should say in your heart, these nations are greater than I, how can I dispossess them? And you shall not be afraid of them, but you shall, and you can circle it, notice he says, remember. You shall remember well that what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt, and this great trials which your eyes saw, the signs and the wonders, the mighty hand of the outstretched arm by which the Lord your God brought you out. So shall the Lord your God do to all the peoples of whom you are afraid. And moreover, the Lord your God will send the hornet among them until those who are left, who hide themselves from you, are destroyed. And you shall not be terrified of them, for the Lord your God is great and awesome. He's among you. Now here, the Lord specifically said that if they became afraid, here's what to do. And you circled it, right? You and I are to do what? To remember. You will do yourself much favor it will encourage your heart if you just spent 30 minutes even tonight when you get home. Just 30 minutes of remembering God's faithfulness, even this past year. You go back and so easily we forget, man, how we prayed and God came through. How we were in need and God provided. How when you didn't know what you were doing, you didn't see it, God came through. It encourages us as we continue to go forward. And it's a good exercise when fear comes. The enemy was strong. The enemy, it was impossible for them to overcome the cities. They didn't have a plan. But we know, looking back, did God bring his people into the land or not? He did, right? So the same is true for you and I. What's ahead for you in 2026? We don't have all the answers. We don't know all the plans. But I can tell you this, that the Lord is in it. I will encourage you, encourage us, encourage myself in the Lord, to see the Lord in the difficulties, to see the Lord in all that's ahead. And as we move forward, it's important